told me, hey Jeff, if you were to touch my finger like this, when I was high on ecstasy, it felt like 10,000 people were touching me. I don't know where she got 10,000, but that's what she said. It feels good to them. But you can see she's got the candy necklace, she's got the pacifier on one of those things, and she's just got that look, look at me. Okay? There's another one dancing. You can tell he's sweating profusely. He's got the candy necklace and he's got the pacifier around his neck. The kid on the far right, man, eyes are dilated, fixed, and he's got that pacifier in his mouth. Everybody knows, right? Oh yeah. Here. How natural is that? You see those guys with the mask, and you see that he's holding up the E sign too. The guy in the bottom right corner, the guy in the top left, he's got the pacifier in his mouth. Not natural, not right. Okay, something's going on there. There's an ecstasy user's pupils. They also dilate the pupil. You think that guy's got problems? And where's the rest of his sober friends to help him out? Natural hallucinogens. This is the one. The Jimson weed. All right. Every spring in Norman, when this stuff starts greening up, the kids will go try it. A handful of them, and I don't know. They go back to school naked, and they get caught. All right. Or some various stage of undress. Every naked man call I have been on in 20 years as a police officer has been behind or after an episode of somebody using a hallucinogen drug. Your body temperature is going to go way, way up. And what do we do when we get hot? We take our clothes off. It doesn't matter if it's 40 degrees or 100 degrees outside. All right? That's why I tell people I hate the heat. If it's cold, I can dress warm. I can put my jacket on, my hat, and go outside right now and be comfortable. But if it's 110, if I took all my clothes off, you'd be disgusted and I'd still be hot. Okay? So that's just how it works. But and you can either eat the seeds, they can chew on the leaves, but apparently the seeds contain the most potent part. All right. The other thing that we see the most of is psilocybin mushrooms. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to grow mushrooms. Unlike marijuana, it's fairly difficult to grow. But mushrooms, all you need is a controlled temperature, a dark place, and some moisture, and you're going to grow. The spores aren't illegal to possess. That mushroom stem's got to be so tall before it will produce the psilocybin or the psilocybin, which is the illegal part of it. Okay. This was actually taken out of a lady's house down in Norman a year or so ago. She had 23 pounds of finished product in her house, along with who knows how many pounds that were growing. She can't sell it. In fact, she can't sell it because people are afraid of it. So I don't know why she's growing so much. You got 24 finished pounds. I don't think you need any more. A pound of homegrown indoor marijuana would go for $4,000, $3,000 to $4,000. That stuff is about $300 a pound, and she can't get rid of it. Okay, and there she is. Not been convicted yet, so I don't want to reveal her identity. Indicators of hallucinogen use. These are people you're going to think are mental patients, walked away from the mental hospital because of the way they're acting, talking, and walking. Most oftentimes they have hallucinations. They talk about things that are not there. They'll have a dazed appearance, body tremors, perspiring heavily, a difficulty with speech, pile erection, which is goosebumps, okay, and statements suggesting hallucinations. You can eat it, you can smoke it, it can be absorbed through your skin transdermally, it can be injected, or you can snort it. Any questions? All right, let's get into the narcotic analgesics. Heroin, opium, morphine, codeine, Dilaudid, Demerol, methadone, Darvon, Darvocet, Percocet. We could talk for an hour about just the names of the narcotic analgesics. Remember, I told you there's over 6,000 of those pills available for doctors to prescribe. This category is sometimes called opioids. The psychoactive drugs that contain either are found in opium or derived chemically from opium or produce effects similar to those of the opium derivatives. An analgesic is a drug that relieves pain. It differs from anesthetic in that it lowers one's perception of pain. It doesn't stop it like an anesthetic would. Okay? Non-narcotic analgesics such as aspirin and Tylenol and Motrin relieve pain but do not produce narcosis, which means numbness or sedation. And they're not controlled, so we necessarily aren't concerned. The three characteristics common to all narcotic analgesics, doesn't matter if it's Lortab, Vicodin, heroin, or morphine, is number one, they relieve pain and they work very well. Number two, they'll produce withdrawal signs and symptoms when the user is physically dependent and the drug is stopped. And two, they suppress the signs and symptoms of chronic morphine withdrawal. Okay? So why do we give a narcotic to a guy that is withdrawn from narcotic? Just to make him normal, basically. All right? Because that's how powerful narcotics are on the brain. Heroin is diacetylmorphine. Heroin and morphine are basically the exact same thing. There are 5 types of heroin. We've got black tar, Mexican brown, Colombian, Southeast, and Southwest Asian. 99.9% of the heroin that we see in Oklahoma is Mexican black tar, coming right up I-35. Okay? We're actually seeing some of the roots change coming out of Arizona because of it's such a profitable drug right here in the heartland of Oklahoma. And then you're going to go on to Arkansas and Tennessee and West Virginia and Kentucky because of this opioid pill problem that we have. All right? And I'll give you a reason. I'll show you about the heroin intels and cases we've worked and the dramatic increase of what we've seen in this because of the pill problem. Intelligence reports in 2001, 02, you can see we hardly and then now we've already had like 14 this year. All right? And so, for the first time in history last year, the city of Enid had heroin, street-level dealers selling heroin on the streets in Enid, Oklahoma. Okay? And it's because of the pill problem that we've had for a while and it's getting worse and worse and worse. OxyContin, $1 a milligram for oxycodone. $1 a milligram, 30 milligram tablet, $30. One pill. Or $100 for heroin that will get you through the day. Well, you get more bang for your buck, all right? There's 8 pounds seized at Tulsa International Airport back when we were on the task force. There's some balloons heroin. That's actually from the West Coast, coming in from Asia. There's some Mexican brown and black tar heroin in search warrant. There's some black tar heroin. Like I said, they sell them in bigs and smalls right now. And a big is 3/4 gram, it's about $90. And a small is 1/2 gram, it's $50. And believe it or not, the drug dealers that control this stuff right now in the metro area, they've been in place for a long, long time. And they're pretty smart. They keep getting arrested, and a couple days later they're back in business with a different phone. But somehow they keep their customer phone list, and they know who to call, and let's just start going again. All right? They'll offer daily specials. Buy 3 bigs, get a small free. Weekly specials. Buy 10 bigs this week, we'll give you 2 bigs at the end of the week for free. All right? And this is how they do business. The drug user calls the phone and says, and they'll recognize the voice or they'll recognize the number, and they'll say, I need 3 bigs. Say, okay, 44th and Shields, half an hour, gold car. Drug user drives up there, 30 minutes, he gets a phone call, you there? I'm here. A gold car drives by with the drug mule in it. And he follows the gold car. And the gold car goes back into one of those neighborhoods and make 2 or 3 loops to make sure the police aren't following him. They pull over, the drug mule walks, spits the dope out of his mouth in these balloons, hands it to the user. The user pays him. They go their separate ways. When we were on that wire case in 2008, I can't tell you how many times we watched that happen. Every case, every time we followed somebody to the city in a car, obviously, they go up there, they get dope. What do you think the first thing they did when they got that heroin? They shot up. They pulled over and they shot up. We'd see them doing it. And then guess what they're going to do? Drive back to normal. Endangering everybody on the road. Every single person. Middle of the day, afternoon, morning, it didn't matter. Most of the time, all those transactions were in the daylight hours. Because they didn't need to work late at night like the crack dealer does or the heroin or the coke dealer does. It was a 9 to 5, 7 days a week. Okay? We had those users tell us, look, it's hard to get OxyContin. It's hard to get those Lortabs. But I can get heroin 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. It's just a phone call away. There's 3 bigs, and you unwrap them. Inside that balloon, you have a little bit of foil, and a little bit of plastic, and a black little chunk. And it looks like tar that you would go scrape up off the road. And it smells like vinegar. One of the acids that they use converting the opium into the heroin turns to vinegar, and so that's why it has the vinegar smell. In the 80s, the purity level of heroin was about 3 to 8%, so you had to inject it. And now we're seeing heroin at 30 to 35% pure. That's why we're seeing our emergency room visits go up. Our overdose deaths are going to go up because the heroin purity is going up. All right, In 2008, heroin seized along that southwest border exceeded heroin seized at all the airports, which was the first time in the history of keeping stats. Because the Mexican cartels figured out we can make money sending heroin to the United States. It was methamphetamine, now it's heroin, because of all the opioid pill heads we have in the United States. Here's just some poppy fields. We had some friends, we were on DDA, we go on a TBY trip. That poppy bulb, they cut it, it oozes out the raw opium, they come by and they scrape it. They can get about 5 to 6 cuttings, maybe more, off of that plant before they got cut them down and start over again. Okay? There's hydrocodone, Vicodin, Loratab. Hydrocodone is the psychoactive ingredient. That's the stuff that's the medicine. That's what gets you high. That's what stops the pain. The Vicodin or the Loratab, that's just a brand name, but they all have the same psychoactive ingredient. Hydrocodone by itself, in its purest form, is a Schedule II drug. It's very well controlled. When it's combined with aspirin or acetaminophen, it's a Schedule III. So that relaxes the record keeping that doctors have to do, and it relaxes. You could call in a Schedule III, but you can't call in a Schedule II to the pharmacy. Also, if the doctor's writing a script for 150 of those, he's not going to get as much notice if he would if he was doing 150 Schedule II drugs at one time, which only 150 is small anymore. The most I've ever seen is one girl walked out of one office in 30 days with 1,500 tablets from one doctor. 1,500 tablets. Ridiculous. How many prescriptions are written for hydrocodone in the United States on an annual basis? What do you think?
100,000.
Over 100 million. Isn't that crazy? Who in the United States is not taking hydrocodone? OxyContin. This is the one that used to sell for upwards of $1 a milligram, and then Purdue Pharmaceutical, after making literally billions of dollars off that product, and they knew they had to settle a fairly like a multi-million-dollar, $12 million or $14 million suit against the federal government because the government said you misled people when you developed it, saying it's not addictive, and it really is. And they eventually made them do away with 180 milligrams because people were dying left and right in Kentucky and Florida. And so now it comes in 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s, 60s, and 80s. And prior to a couple years ago, you could crush that up and get all the medicine at once. Snort it, eat it, whatever. Crush it as long as you crush it. Now they reformulated it, and now you crush it, it just gels up. Now the dopers are telling us they can take a file and go real slow on it, and it won't gel up. But the people at Purdue Pharmaceutical deny that. And I'm trying to get a chemist, next time we get some OxyContin, we may just have to go buy it, because we don't see it on the street anymore. They went to what we call Roxicodone, which is only a 30 milligram tablet. It's made by a different manufacturer, same drug, and it's only 30 milligrams, but they can crush it and get it all at once. Okay? So it's pure heroin. There are some 40 milligram tablets. Remember, $40 a piece. See, there's $400 worth of dope right there. Okay? There's a search warrant. We walk in, they're getting ready to snort it. Same thing, getting ready to snort it. There's a line. You can't hardly see it by the straw. Methadone. Methadone was very popular several years ago for pain management because it's very cheap and it works very effective. But it stays in your system for a long time. You can take one pill a day and it lasts 24 hours. And it also suppresses those withdrawal symptoms when you take that stuff away from you, the narcotics away from you. So that's the kind of thing, the methadone that we see in the methadone clinics. We have 3 methadone clinics in Oklahoma City. There's over 2,000 people, according to Mental Health, that are on the methadone maintenance program in the state of Oklahoma. Okay? And prior to a couple years ago, we didn't have a heroin problem here. It was all from opioid pill stuff. The fentanyl transdermal packs, we see these quite a bit. Not really, people don't like to get high with them, but if they can't get anything else, they'll get these, all right? There's a sucker that they'll usually don't see these outside the hospital, but if we have a doctor, a nurse, or somebody inside the hospital diverting those, we'll see these end up on the street. It's just a sucker that they put in their mouth. Which is more powerful, heroin or fentanyl? What do you think? Fentanyl. 40 to 50 times more powerful than heroin, and the body will metabolize it to morphine, which is basically heroin, within an hour. You can eat it, smoke it, snort it, or sometimes they'll use it in suppositories. There's a shooter kit. Basically, the doper takes that pill, or they take that heroin, they put it in that spoon, and they put a little water in it, and then they put a little cotton swab in it. And most of the time, that filter, which is a cotton swab, they get that from cigarette filters. So if you see a whole bunch of those in a kid's car or on the floor or whoever, I mean, what's the use of tearing all those up, right? First of all, they shouldn't have cigarettes. But if they do, and you start to see that, that's why else are they doing that? But that's what they'll use as a filter. Here's a picture of some dopers that we deal with in Norman. That's on about a 19-year-old girl who started using OxyContin at a party when she was 17 years old. Within 6 months, she's shooting it intravenously. Within 14 months, she's buying heroin, selling herself to buy heroin. And I would like to be able to use her picture of her junior picture. Beautiful girl. Not now. Okay? Look at her arms. That's her neck, where she's shooting up in that vein in her neck. That's her hand. She's terrible. There's one that got infected. Looks like he got bit by a vampire. Bruising caused by injections probably within the last 24 hours around his neck. Over time, these people will use every vein in their body that they can get to, whether it's in a mirror. Okay? You know, they start off where they can't inject themselves, so I'll have Phil shoot me up. And then after I do that a few times, well, hell, just teach me how to do it. Now if I'm right-handed, my left arm will get used up first. Then I'll learn to do it with my left hand, then my right arm will get up used. Then wherever I can touch with my right hand, wherever. Use it in the mirror, whatever. Okay? And eventually over time, those veins become hard. It's called thrombose, and you can't stick a needle in it. You can't get anything in or out. The general indicators of narcotic analgesics, probably the biggest one that we see is on the nod, and you think your kids are on the nod in class every day. It's kind of like that where they're falling asleep, but they just can't keep their head, all right? They may have facial itching or dry mouth, low, slow, raspy speech, and it constricts the pupils, all right? As severely as the hallucinogens or stimulants did it, but it constricts it. It makes them very, very small, okay? That's in near total darkness. What should that pupil be? It should be constricted out, or it should be dilated out. But look at it. It's down around 1 millimeter. Okay? U.S. consists of approximately 4% of the world's population. Americans consume approximately 80% of the painkillers that are prescribed worldwide. Who in America is not taking a pill? Inhalants. We'll blow through these real quick. These are pretty prevalent in our younger teenagers because it's here to get. They actually still sell some of these in what I call the head shops or the drug paraphernalia shops around town. We don't have any more of them in Norman because I got rid of them. Oklahoma City still has some. But you can go in and buy these nitrous oxide. They call them whippets. Or you can just go buy a can of whipped cream at the grocery store and just barely crack that seal and get the nitrous. And if you've ever bought a can of whipping cream, took it home, and nothing but liquid comes out, that's because some knucklehead took all some stock boy or stock girl or manager or whatever back there sucking down the nitrous while they're stocking the shelf. They call it a cracker or a whippet. They'll put a big balloon on it. They'll put that CO2-looking cartridge in there. They'll crack it. They'll fill up the balloon, and then they carry the balloon around, taking hits. All right. If you've ever been to the dentist and you get the laughing gas, that's nitrous oxide. Right. Paint, gasoline, paint thinner, all kinds of stuff. Anything that they can handle. That in police work is called a clue. You see somebody with a paint all over their head. Here's another one. Gold seems to be their favorite. Walmart gold, they say it tastes better.
Oh, gosh.
And Walmart silver is number 2. This is a young man from the West Coast. Some coppers sent this to us. He was huffing dust off. The stuff you're going to clean your computer keyboard with, and that's coming out at like 1,000,000 degrees below zero, and so it freeze burns it. So you can see it.
Oh my word!
That's it got on his hand. That's the blister on his hand. It just why does somebody want to do that? He's lucky he's not dead. General indicators are going to have odor inhaled substance. They may or may not have the possible trace of the substance around their face. Bloodshot, watery eyes. They're going to act very similar to somebody under the influence of alcohol. Okay? And then marijuana, hash oil, marijuana. Cannabis is a category of drugs derived primarily from various species of plants such as Cannabis sativa and Cannabis indica. The drugs in this category are the most widely abused illicit drugs. I think the most recent surveys of people in the United States were up around 57% of the people surveyed have tried marijuana at least once in their life. Okay? And as doctors said, that talking to the guys, I smoked weed back when I was in high school or college. It wasn't that big of a deal. Well, I'm telling you, it is a big deal. Because I don't know if you've ever heard the term a gateway drug. That if you smoke marijuana, it's a gateway to the next drug and so forth, so forth. Not for every person, but for a lot of people it is. Especially the younger a person is, it will affect that person much differently than a person that's 18 that took it. I think you will all agree with me on this statement that we know more about the brain today than we knew yesterday, the day before, and the week and the month before. One of the studies, the recent studies is out, it says the earlier you expose a child's brain to that chemical substance, the more likely they are to have substance abuse later on in life. And it actually came from an Adderall Ritalin study. Okay? The people that they were handing that stuff out like candy, and they didn't really need it. What they needed was a good snack. All right? But the doc, there was certain tests, brain function tests they needed to do if that kid actually needed the Adderall or Ritalin. The doctors weren't doing that. Oh, he's okay, give him some of this. Okay? And so the thing is that I would tell parents, I go, well, how old were you when you smoked pot? Well, I was in college. I was 19, I was 20, I was 21. Huge difference in a 21-year-old brain than a 12 or 13-year-old brain. Everybody agree with me on that? Mm-hmm. My daughter's 12, and I guarantee if I took her brain out and put it in a bird right now, that bird would fly backwards. I know it. That's the way she thinks. Okay? My wife says there's no difference. We've been together since I was 29. She says my brain's the same now as it was when I was 29. But we know our brains don't quit, or they mature somewhere, quit growing, or when we're early 20s. So there's a huge difference for a 13-year-old kid smoking pot than a 19-year-old kid smoking pot. There's a huge difference. Even bigger, than a 13 or 14-year-old kid taking heroin or OxyContin than an 18 or 19-year-old kid. All right? Huge difference. They say first-time people that drink alcohol, the chances of the first-time drinker, doesn't matter what age, struggling with alcohol addiction later on in life, 12 to 14%. The chances of a first-time crack smoker struggling with addiction later on in life, 80%. Huge difference in some of these drugs. And as far as being a gateway drug, I'll be the first to admit, just because you smoke pot doesn't mean you're going to end up shooting up heroin in a gutter at San Francisco 6 years from now. I would agree with that. That's not going to happen. But it is a gateway aspect drug in this way. The 13-year-old that buys marijuana, that's how he's learning how to buy drugs, how to be the drug dealer, how to hide it from mom and dad, how to do all that kind of stuff that's going to get him in serious trouble later on in life. And beside the fact that that chemical in his brain at that early age is bad, bad, bad. Okay? And parents just can't seem to get past that. Delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC, is the primary psychoactive ingredient in cannabis. It's Oklahoma's #1 cash crop. This is the joke we used to say. 53-54% of all drug arrests in Oklahoma are possession of marijuana. It comes in all various shapes and sizes. The further you get away from that southwest border, the more expensive marijuana or any other illicit drug is for that matter. We can pay about $400 to $500, maybe $600 a pound, depending on the time of the year for marijuana in Oklahoma. We take that same $400 a pound marijuana to Chicago, it's over $1,000. Okay? Even in Kansas, it's $150 to $200 higher. So, predominantly what we see is a $25 sack of marijuana, which is a quarter sack, which, gas prices go up, food prices go up, all that stuff goes up. You think drug prices will go up, but they really don't. Only if there's a shortage will go up, but it will always come back down. The price of a quarter sack of marijuana is $25, right, Angela? How long has it been $25? Since you were a 12th grader buying it on the streets of Lone Wolf. I know. That's just what it is. $25. Sometimes it gets a little higher, but it always comes back down. Because it's always in demand. We don't need to raise it. It is what it is. Here's some indoor grow pits. I will tell you that at least in Norman, and I don't know about Oklahoma City, but we do at least one controlled delivery a week of a package, a FedEx package or a UPS package that they intercept in the mail that's got marijuana coming from California, from the knuckleheads out there that legalized it. It's either California or Colorado, but 9 times out of 10 it's California. all right? They can buy it so much cheaper, and we're talking about an ounce, just a little bit of marijuana that they go buy for $100 out there. Well, we can put it on the streets of Oklahoma and get $1,000 out of it. Huge profit margins, okay? And low risk. I mean, chances are you get caught with an ounce of marijuana, and any municipality around here, you're going to get a ticket, just like speeding, all right? And then there's a whole thing about, well, let's legalize it. I don't want us to talk about that. We'd be here all day. There's another, just big buds. That's what they like. All the female plants are the ones that produce and contain THC. So early on in the plant stage, they figure out which is the male, which is the female. Because when the female starts budding, they got to get the male plants out of there so they don't get pollinated. They want those buds to get big, big, and big. We've seen marijuana buds that are tied up because they're so big and they're drooping, and they have sticky, oily, and different colors on them from all the THC coming to the top of them. There's just big bundles of marijuana and kilos of cocaine. That's just what we deal with. Here's what we're up against. All right, this is a tractor trailer coming across the border, come across the Laredo. It went through the X-ray machines. It passed. The drug dogs get on at 85 miles north at a checkpoint. They open it up. The first thing they see is, guy's going to Chicago, and he's only got like 8 pallets of freight on there. But it costs $2 a mile to run that truck. And they get paid by the weight. He's losing money to go to Chicago with this. That's clue number one. So they open it up, and it's ceramic tile, 14 by 14 inch ceramic tile. It had a full tile on the top, a full tile on the bottom, and it had the tile on the side, so it looked like it was a full tile. And in it was 6 pounds of marijuana, 2,300 pounds of pot, destined for Chicago at $1,000 to $1,500 a pound. That's how he's making his money. Okay, you can see that's how it's pulling out. Then you can see the hollowed out. That's why it got past the X-ray machine. Now, this wasn't two knuckleheads in their garage putting that together. This was a concentrated effort by major manufacturers, drug dealers, to get this into the United States. A billion-dollar industry. They can track not seizures, but cash flow in the United States, because the Federal Reserve can tell us how much cash is on the street, how much is in the banks. Pretty close. So it's accounted for. The money that's not accounted for is that drug money going back south. All right? They figure it's about $26 billion a year that goes back south in U.S. currency. $26 billion. What other industry generates that kind of revenue? Gas, oil, not even the auto industry anymore. $26 billion. Huge industry. We're starting to see a lot of this kind of stuff on the streets, and a lot of it comes from California, Colorado, baked goods containing tetrahydrocannabinol. This guy was actually, he was buying the marijuana at a very high THC content. He had a press, and he pressed that THC out, which then they call it hash or hash oil. And then he made a butter, and then he made cookies. And sure enough, and he told us about it. He didn't have said anything. We wouldn't have took those cookies. And so he told us they were, and so we field tested them. They tested positive. We sent them to OSBI. OSBI got really excited about it. They thought it was a neat thing. Put it in the microgram and went out nationwide. California people were like, oh, we see that every day. Now I tell all the young police officers, I go, hey, next time somebody brings a plate of cookies to the police department for you knuckleheads to eat, you better think twice about it. Because I guarantee you, they set it down there, it'll get scarfed up in a matter of minutes. Okay? I don't know if somebody would be foolish enough to do that at a school. I know that they would be foolish enough to do it as a prank at a police department. You gotta think about it. If you don't know the source, don't put it in your mind. Relax, Mom. It's just marijuana. This came out of an 18 and 19-year-old's apartment on the northern end of Cleveland County. It was actually in Oklahoma City. And the female was about 17 months pregnant. And they had a 2-bedroom apartment. They had baby's room all set up because she was expecting any day. Now, Daddy's out selling dope. When we arrest him, get the search warrant, go back to his house. She's sitting there at the table. The little silver pistol, the little 25 Chrome, that's hers. The machine gun's Dad's. All right? They had baby's room set up. The police monitor and scanner was in the baby's room. Okay? At least they didn't have any of the drugs in there. But, yeah, they are now both boards of the state. I don't know where the baby's at, but 18, 19-year-old kids. College kids in Norman. Marijuana's not dangerous. It's fine. Why do we got to have guns and bulletproof vests? I can tell you why they had to have it. Because they're selling high-grade marijuana that's $3,000 to $4,000 a pound And believe it or not, drug users, drug dealers are not the most outstanding citizens that we have. They're fairly nefarious, a lot of them are. And so when the drug dealer says, hey, look, we just took $3,000 over there, and we know so-and-so took $3,000 over there, and so-and-so, let's go rob the place. And they had been robbed, they had lost all their money, and they said, they ain't going to happen to us again. We're going to buy vests, guns, we're going to defend our stash. And then the police came. Here's, how many pounds and how many thousands of dollars. This was actually a reversal we did where we sold 126 pounds of weed to some idiots, and they showed up with $35,000. They went to jail, took their money. Here's 50 pounds of marijuana on a buy bus in South Oklahoma City. It just got to be where initially it was who doesn't have a bag of marijuana, and then who doesn't have a pound of marijuana. It's everywhere. We see it everywhere. And I'll say this about legalizing it. There's a video that got on YouTube, or go look for it. It was done by 60 Minutes several years ago. And they talked to all the people that were proponents of legalizing it in California years and years ago. And now they are all opponents of it, said it's a big giant mess. We got to clean it up. We got to change something. Their recommendation is have the federal government step in and take care of it. That ain't going to happen, but here's the answer to that. We have a pill for it, just like we have a pill for everything else. Synthetic marijuana, Marinol or Dronabinol. But you don't have to smoke it. And that's what kills me about the marijuana people is one of the most harmful thing you can do to your body is smoke. All right? And how can a doctor in good faith sit there and tell you to go smoke a drug when it doesn't matter what benefit that drug is giving your body, the smoke is doing 10 times more harm. I can understand it if you were a cancer patient, you're going to die, so what does it matter? But for the guy that's got back pain or the girl that's got foot pain because she wears high heels, that ain't the answer. But we got a pill for it. Effects of cannabis, people under the influence may have a brief attention span, divided attention impairment. They have a marked reddening of the eyes, or the whiteness of the eye, the conjunctiva. They'll have an odor of marijuana, the marijuana debris in their mouth oftentimes. They may have body tremors, increased appetite, relaxed inhibitions, that's the biggest one. Disoriented, just like an intoxicated person on alcohol. Impaired perception of time and distance, and eye return. You can eat it, you can smoke it. Let's talk about these real quick. Synthetic drugs, and I don't want to get those confused with other drugs that are man-made, but they're controlled. They are synthetic, but they're controlled, all right? Artificially produced substances for the illicit market, which are mostly manufactured from chemical compounds. Don't get them confused with CDS, which are a group of drugs, some synthetic, some natural, but all are listed as being illegal. Some synthetics are controlled, while others are not. This is the K2 and the Spice. The two that we mainly deal with are Spice and K2, which are smokable form, and are synthetic cannabinoids or synthetic marijuana, and then the bath salts, which are sold as bath salts, that you would put in the bath water is what they say. But I don't know how much bath salts are. I've never bought any. Has anybody ever bought bath salts at Bed Bath & Body Beyond? How much are they? What do you think? Like $10 for a box or what? Less than that? Well, bath salts here are up to $40 for a gram. Okay? No, it's not the same thing. They're not even close. I guess if you put that gram of, it wouldn't do nothing. It wouldn't do anything. Okay? Spice K2, which is a synthetic cannabinoid. It's in the mid-1980s. A chemist from Clemson University named John W. Huffman began synthesizing these things, and he was looking for medicine, looking for things to treat AIDS and other things. He isolated 450 synthetic cannabinoid compounds, which were used to test the effects of the brain and other organs. Generally, the Spice and K2 products will produce similar effects as marijuana. However, they're oftentimes 10 to 500 times more powerful than marijuana. Okay? As a result, users will oftentimes experience convulsions, panic attacks, nausea, hallucinogens, a rapid heartbeat, and difficulty breathing. I've got an 18-year-old kid down there in Norman that did this and ended up in the hospital, and he has permanently damaged his heart. Won't get better. It might get worse. Who knows? Okay?
This is kind of what's going on right now. This is really popular. It can be bought in smoke shops, and our kids are getting a hold of this stuff. And we've sent one to the emergency room this year from here.
There's one out in Canadian County. I believe she's still on a ventilator. Been out there for about 8 months. In an interview, Huffman said, hey, it's like playing Russian roulette because you don't have the toxicity data, we don't know the metabolites, and we don't know the pharmacokinetics. He said he wasn't the least bit surprised that it was being produced. Somebody's going to look for something to make money from and bring people temporary pleasure. That's just the way the American... It actually started over in Europe first in the early 2000s. The good thing about the synthetic cannabinoids or the K2 spice is when they first came onto the scene, they only used 2 or 3 of these known chemicals, and they're all J, W, H, number whatever. That's the listed chemical. Well, then we controlled those, but the people that were making them knew that there were 450 of them. So they introduced a few more. Well, then they got rid of those. Well, guess what? We got more. Finally, the Oklahoma wised up, and we controlled all of the synthetic cannabinoids that we know about. So almost all of those are a Schedule I substance. And Angelo and so these places are selling it, they're going to get in trouble because that's just like selling heroin or LSD or ecstasy. There's no accepted medicinal use. That is a Schedule I drug. They're just like a drug dealer on the corner. Okay. Bath salts, on the other hand, much more wider spectrum of drugs, and they're coming up with new ones all the time. I don't think we will ever be able to catch up and schedule all of those. Also, it's more of a synthetic stimulant like cocaine or methamphetamine, but it also will induce hallucinogens like ecstasy and things of that nature. Almost even like a PCP type effect. These synthetic stimulants are chemicals. The chemicals are derivatives of cathinone and methadone, and these are the other names I talked about. We talked about those synthetic hallucinogens. Here's some of the names, street names: Bless, Blue Silk, Cloud9. That Cloud9 has an interesting website you can go buy. Most of this stuff is not sold in the United States. It's actually going to be shipped in from Canada or from the Philippines or somewhere like that. Usually ingested by snorting it. They can also be taken orally, or they can smoke it. People who abuse these reported agitation, insomnia, irritability, dizziness, depression, paranoia, delusions, suicidal thoughts, seizures, and panic impairment. There was a soldier over in Arkansas a year or so ago that chopped up his kid. This is what he's taking. Very, very bad. And they don't. This is a new enough drug that they don't know what the long-term effects physically and the health problems associated with are going to be. Okay. Like I said, I can't. There's just literally hundreds and hundreds of manufacturers out there. But you hear your kids talking about, hey, the incense, or I'm going to get some spice, or Mom, can I have some money to buy some incense? It smells really, really good. No. Okay? Like I said, this stuff is anywhere from $5 to $40 a gram, and it's actually getting more expensive because it's getting harder to get. All right? Because all of it's controlled. Same thing with bath salts that come in different sizes, different colors. And the majority of what we see is in that little round container. It looks like a Carmex jar, if that makes any sense. And it always has some kind of crazy name on it. Same thing, $5 to $25 a gram and up. It's not getting as expensive as the K2 or the spice because not as much of it's controlled. All right.
Okay, John. Oh.
That's all I got. I know there wasn't very much.
Well, okay. Since we have a limited crowd, let me just say, just be aware of what your kids are doing. I mean, really, be nosy. It's your right, and you need to know what your kids are doing. If there is a change in behavior, or if there's a marked change in their grades, or who they're running around with, or how they look, that ought to all be clues to you that something's up. And it's difficult to have the discussion from our end to you if you're not willing to be receptive to, we're concerned about your kids here. So please don't hesitate to call and ask us if you have friends that you think might. It's always hard to have these kinds of evenings because anytime you have a parent university, well, I'm a good parent, I don't need to know all this stuff. There's a lot of people in denial about what's going on with their kids and their families, and so we'll offer something like this again. We'll try to do a little bit better job of making people people aware of what's happening. But I just want to tell you, please be in your kids' business.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, be in your kids' business. They need you to be concerned about it. It's easier to correct the course the earlier you have questions or concerns. And I just say, please let us be your partner in helping the kids stay drug-free. Because it's out there. The kids, it changes all the time. These synthetic drugs don't show up on regular drug tests. So kids that are in trouble know how to beat the system. I mean, they're smart. So, help us help you be smarter, I guess, maybe. And these fellows absolutely do a good job of helping us. So, anyhow, I'm glad you came. If you'd like to come up and ask questions or see some of the things that they have, so you might recognize it, you're more than welcome to do that. And I appreciate you coming, and thanks, fellas.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here.
Now, somebody said they had a question. Did I answer the question maybe, or have you forgotten you were here so long?
Me?
I thought you said you had a question when you came in. You said you were going to ask some questions.
Thank you very much.
No? All right.